Are we live? Hello. Let me. Yes, we are. Okay. Wonderful. Let me go. Let me pin this. Discussing Fellowship, Book 2, Chapters 1 through 3. Hi. Okay. Pinning this, and then, okay, great. Okay, wonderful. I'm stuck in an ad on my own stream, so let me go ahead and, okay, great. Wonderful. Hi, welcome in. Hi, book club. Happy Monday. Oh my gosh, I'm still drinking coffee. I finished doing my reading and my note taking out in the sun, and so I regret it like this much because now I'm feeling that like sun sleepy you feel after a long day in the sun. I wasn't even like, I read by a pool, by my gym pool, but I didn't even like get in the pool. It wasn't intentional. Okay, I went to the gym. I made myself go to the gym. I made myself go to yoga. Best yoga class of my life. It was great, but then I was like, oh, you know what? I could finish reading by the pool, and so I did, and it was phenomenal. But man, that sun. But hi everyone. Hi Andrew. Hi Wild. Hi Martin. Hi Michael. Hi Nick. Hi Michael Q. And hi Kendra. And hi anyone else that's hanging out either live currently or watching after we're live. I'm so glad that you're here. Today we're talking about Fellowship of the Ring. We are discussing Book 2, Chapters 1 through 3. Those chapters are titled Mini Meetings, Council of Elrond, and The Ring Goes South. And if you're broadly familiar with the story, that covers Frodo waking up after passing out at the ford, all the way to starting and rerouting on the journey to Mordor with the group, with the Fellowship of Nine as it stands. But we are going to dive into that now. I say this every week, and I do my due diligence and I write my notes, but I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you 5 things. I'll actually tell you a million things. I won't tell you a million things, actually. We don't have time for that. Wildband continuously puts the most beautiful, well-written descriptions and outlines of what we've read in the community section every week. Now, if you don't know, every Monday afternoon, I post in our community section here on YouTube, and I say, drop any thoughts, questions, comments, themes that you want to discuss for today's live stream. And I'm always blown away with what's put in there. It's always phenomenal. We always go over it. Sometimes more broadly, sometimes more directly, but I'm always looking at what you guys put in there. So thank you so much. And of course, we obviously talk about anything that comes up live while we're here on stream. Let me take a sip of coffee. Because I'm about to read this, and it's going to be phenomenal. Thank you once again, Wild, for taking the time to write this. And not just this week, but every week that you do this. Tolkien brainstorming. Kelly, get in here. Get in here. Okay. We're discussing probably, so I don't know. I feel like I say, well, I don't know if I say this every week, but these are some of my favorite chapters. I think we see some brilliance of Tolkien in here. We're familiar with the world. We're connected to the characters. We have just passed through something really traumatic and are having this moment of rest, but also this deep moment of planning. And so this precipice that we're on right now in chapters 1 through 3 of Book 2 of Fellowship of the Ring is crucial to the rest of the story. one of these weeks I'm going to be off my game and disappoint. And just know, if you're ever not able to put something like this in the community section, Wild, you are still valuable and valued and welcomed and adored. Like, absolutely in no way does something like this reflect your how much you bring and how much I appreciate you being here every week. So just know that. So is the Council of Elrond long and dense enough for you? Actually, Andrew, I felt like the Council of Elrond went by much quicker than I ever anticipated it to. Surprisingly. How did it feel for you guys? Let me know while I start reading this. Okay. The text for today begins with Gandalf filing. Let's start over. I am getting over a little bit of a cold, so if I sound a little more mumbly than usual, I know I try to be on top of my mumbles, but I don't have full use of my nose yet still, which does impact my speech, unfortunately, a little bit. So I do apologize for any slurred mumble. Well, slurred is maybe a little rough of a phrase, but any mumbles that happen as I read this. Hi, C. Wilson. It didn't feel like we read any more than usual, to be honest. Chapters were great. I would agree, Nick. I agree full-heartedly. Okay. The text for today begins with Gandalf filling Frodo and us in on everything we have missed. He tells us what happened to Frodo, how long Frodo has been tended by healers, and hints at what has happened to himself. We hear how mighty Glorfindel is. We learn that Aragorn is one of the great people, the men of the West, and there are few in Middle-earth like him. And we learn, contrary to everything we have seen so far, that Butterbur is not stupid. We get a little dire talk about what might have happened to Frodo, but then we come to the most fascinating part to me, Gandalf talking to himself while he looks at Frodo closely. Still, that must be expected, said Gandalf to himself. He is not half through yet, and to what he will come in the end, not even Elrond can foretell. Not to evil, I think. He may become like a glass filled with a clear light for eyes to see that can. I think we all recognize that there is foreshadowing in that premonition, but what exactly it means is still beyond us. Even on my 20th read, I am not certain, nor is Gandalf. And I'm going to pause here for a second because there's two things that I want to point out immediately from the get-go on this, this overview of what we've read. One is, with the way this book is written, we have this point of view that we assume, perchance, or we've talked about this before, is kind of Bilbo's point of view, or like the book that Bilbo wrote, right? And this, the way that these few chapters are written, or at the very least, many meetings and Council of Elrond, and partially because it is still probably from Bilbo's written book point of view, right? And Tolkien probably had that in mind, but it reads a little bit differently because it almost feels like we're right there. Sometimes it feels like, sometimes when I'm reading, I feel like I'm in the sky watching everything happen. Like I have this like eagle eye view of what's happening in the book. And at least in many meetings in Council of Elrond, I felt like I was sitting at the table. I felt like I was in the room, either like eavesdropping on everything happening, or like I was a part of the conversation. I've chaired meetings at my community theater that felt like the Council of Elrond. Oh, Kendra, I bet you have stories to tell. I thought about something about Frodo and Sam's relationship. Sam isn't only Frodo's employee. Frodo and Merry and Pip are landed gentry, sort of. And since Tolkien is born in the 19th century, that still was an important difference. Yeah, it absolutely is. It absolutely is an important difference. And we'll get to Sam. I do have very specifically wanting to talk about Sam at some point today, and his character arc at this point in time in the story as we've seen it. Nick, I fully agree with you. Because I underlined, wrote that quote down in my notes. He is not half through yet, and to what he will come in the end, not even Elrond can foretell. Not to evil, I think. He may become like a glass filled with a clear light for eyes to see that can. And this is also something that's kind of chosen here and there in this storytelling, is sometimes we get to know the future in the present of the story at which we are reading in the moment. But oftentimes we get this deep foreshadowing, and sometimes it's really on the nose, and then sometimes like this, it leaves a little bit for you to think about, and it kind of leaves that element of mystery. This is super helpful because, like, if you knew the ending while you were reading currently, well, even if you do know the ending while you're reading currently, but like, if the book told you every outcome of every decision while you're reading it, then there would be no reason to read 3 500-page books. You know what I mean? I mean, there would. It's still great fiction and it's great writing and whatnot, but you get my point. You probably get my drift. There was a faint change, just a hint, as it were, of transparency about him, and especially about the left hand that lay outside upon the coverlet. And they talk about how cold the hand was, and that's the first thing Sam does when he enters the room, is grabs Frodo's left hand, and then he's like, oh, it's not as cold anymore. The Morgul dagger wouldn't have killed Frodo. It would have turned him into a wraith like a dark rider, just much weaker. Yeah, I'm sure we'll get to that, Kelly. You are exactly right, though, yeah. Which, like, that's kind of scarier, is it not? That it would have manipulated his heart, which was the desire, because like they wanted to hit his heart, but they hit his shoulder. But if they hadn't gotten that piece of blade out of him, it would have eventually spread to his heart, or so we think and assume. Okay, carrying on. Then we have a feast. We are exposed to Elrond for the first time, and his description instantly commands respect. Seated at his right and left, we finally see Glorfindel and Gandalf in all of their splendor, revealed as great lords in their own right. And we meet Arwen, I don't know how to say that, the Ebon Star of the Elves, in whom the likeness of Luthien Tinuville has come once more. We get multiple paragraphs to tell us that her beauty and grace are unparalleled in Middle-earth, especially with the call back to Luthien. We hear that Sam, Merry, and Pippin are invited to the feast, but not seated at the most prominent places like Frodo is. Then Frodo meets Gloin, and the reader gets a lot of information relevant to Bilbo's adventures. These are mostly Merry, but both Hobbit and Dwarf deflect questions a little close to home. A couple things I think we'll pause at every break that Wild put in here, because I have so much to say, and I know we'll continue to go deeper and deeper into it as we meet. And for anyone that's new here, we usually end somewhere around an hour 45, an hour 50 minutes, so close to like 2 hours of discussing, which usually feels like the sweet spot, in my opinion. We just end at a natural time. We're not here to force any sort of time allocation on it, but so to circle back to this, and Nick commented about this in his post, there are the character descriptions that we get through Frodo's eyes in these chapters is so well done, so well written, and very telling. Like, the words used to describe each character hit home to me, and maybe it's because I've seen the movies and it's like, oh, I can piece 3 and 3 together and I get 6, and now I see that like I see Aragorn in my head as I see Aragorn that was in the movie. It's what we do with the time given us. Isn't that true? But let me read a few of the ones that Nick wrote in here. Frodo described Arwen as queenly. And then Elrond is shown as a wise and experienced leader. Gloin is a loyal old friend of Bilbo. Boromir is a heroic delegate of the Men of Gondor. Legolas is quick-witted elven prince from Mirkwood. And oh, interesting. Nick does say that Gimli is a glaring exception of not being as similar to its movie counterpart. But and Nick says, are there any recently introduced characters that you're looking forward to seeing more after joining our story? Oh, I actually think the way Boromir is written is worth talking about independently today. And there was a Legolas moment that I'll spoil it right now. I wrote in my book, I just wrote hot exclamation point underline. And and then I also messaged one of my best friends and I said, I just wish that I could be besties with Gandalf and Aragorn, because their kinship is so sweet and so like, they just seem to have so much respect for each other even when they're disagreeing. And I'm a big fan of the way that they're written to, like, they just seem very fond of each other, and I'm very fond of the both of them, and I'm very fond of the both of them together. There are constantly little sentences that don't seem important in that moment, but 150 pages later, that unimportant line, exactly, yeah, like Kelly and I think of the dreams when I think of that. Or this book has, and I've said this from the beginning, and I think I'm partial to this thought because of like what I've read up on Tolkien prior to starting my reading of this book. But like, even though there are moments where like things appear in the book, characters appear in the book as like they appeared in Tolkien's brain, I do think that he edited this book to the high heavens, and like there aren't any mistakes. Like everything has a purpose. And when sometimes things get wordy, or sometimes things seem to get a little bit like, well, does that really matter? Like if you really think about life, all 24 hours, 60 minutes of every hour of the day wouldn't be written in a book, right? But like the thing that makes Tolkien's writing so spectacular is that like sometimes he leaves in like the little bits of like life and living and experience that mean something, but they're not like maybe the bigger milestone moments, but they're still important in a lot of ways. And I think that truly is something that I admire about Tolkien's writing. Although, you know, sometimes does it get a little long-winded? For sure it does. But like we saw with the Council of Elrond, like one of the longest chapters we've read so far, there was nothing in that chapter that I was like, oh, we could have gone without this. Like I wanted and needed all of that information. Arkavi, hello, welcome in. I hope you're doing well today. Okay, let's continue on. We move on to I'll say, like, I love the little moments where it's like, I think what exactly it said was, oh, I probably won't find it. I know I wrote a little note. Oh, I don't need that up. There was a, sorry, hold on. There it is. Everything moved around on me for some reason. Okay, here we go. Sorry about that. There's a moment where I think it's Gloin and Frodo are talking together, and then they're like, oh no, you know, we shouldn't go any further. And then there's another moment where I think Gandalf says, I think it's in the Council of Elrond, and Gandalf mentions that if we were to talk about all the relationship between the elves and the dwarves, that we would be so off track for the purpose of this meeting. And it gives this little bit of like, there's a history there, and it builds that history without telling you everything. In a world where Tolkien, some will say, tells you too much, there are many moments where he decides not to tell you everything. And those moments are so well chosen in the way that he tells you he's not telling you everything, but like drops a hint or like gives you the background without giving you the background. It changes the game. Because then you're like, okay, so the elves and the dwarves, not on necessarily good terms. And you get it from how he's written it. And let's continue. We move on to the Hall of Fire and meet Bilbo. And not such an exciting moment. The meeting is merry, and they greet one another warmly and talk fondly until Bilbo asks to see the ring, when things turn strange. Frodo reluctantly produces it. Then things immensely turn sour between them. They both feel the shadow. Bilbo apologizes, and Frodo puts it away. They talk fondly of the Shire until Strider turns up, and we get a lecture on his naming conventions. Númenor gets mentioned, from whence the men of Westale, we have heard it called Westernese before. Bilbo and Aragorn go off to write a song, leaving Frodo lost in the music, and we see the magic of the elves transport him to the people and places the song describe. And we really do. Like, the moment with the elves and the beauty of that entire experience in Rivendell. And like, you see all these little moments where the beauty and the sereneness and the environment of Rivendell takes away the stress. There was even a really beautiful line about how like we couldn't continue to worry about the future because we had to wait. This is getting ahead of where we're at in this summary, but we had to wait for people to come back and tell us if it was safe or not, or where it was safe, or where we could go, or how we were going to go about leaving and getting the ring to Mordor. But and we see this line where it's like, well, we can't worry about that now, so like in the present time all our stresses faded away in Rivendell. And I'll tell you, the book so serenely shows me what Rivendell is. It's not what we saw in the movies. But it's not nearly as grand or beautiful to me in my brain when I'm reading it in the book as it is in the movie. And in the movie, it was fucking stunning. And as it should be. I'm fucking playing small. Oh, sorry. Sorry, YouTube. I didn't cuss. You cussed. Sorry. My bad. Okay. Then we come to it at last. My absolute favorite song, in my opinion, Tolkien's magnum opus, says Wild. The Song of Eärendil. The rhyme scheme, meter, and construction are flawless and maybe unique in English language poem. It is technically perfect, and it compromises the best history of Eärendil that we have recorded anywhere. We get all of the pieces mentioned in the song in more detail elsewhere, but they are scattered and less coherent than ever. After the song, Bilbo is asked for a second hearing, and he declines before retreating to Frodo and admitting that Aragorn mostly kept out the songwriting because he thought it cheeky to write about Eärendil in the House of Elrond. Eärendil is Elrond's father, as we learn in the next chapter. Yes, and I have actually prepared this little graphic for us to perceive, so we know the family tree and the history of the elves. The Frodo-Bilbo scene. To his distress and amazement, he found that he was no longer looking at Bilbo. A shadow seemed to have fallen between them. And we see that so drastically in these chapters, how it's like when the ring isn't involved, everything seems peachy keen. The moment we see the ring or the ring is taken out, it's like it gets just like it's always like a shadow, or like people change a little bit, or it gets a little tense or lot tense. That's a nice graphic. I did not make it. I Googled this. If something is wrong on this graphic, I do apologize. I did not do my due diligence to make sure this graphic was correct. I just picked one that felt like it was clear and direct, and I tried to make sure it was coming from somewhere that seemed reputable, but my apologies. I apologize if anything is incorrect. I don't think it is. I think it's fine, but there's just a little caveat there. The original version of the poem appeared in The Adventures of Tom Bombadil. Oh, and we'll read that poem now while we're talking about it, because I think it's worth it, although I'll probably butcher it, and I don't have my normal lung capacity right now. So I believe Andrew put a poem or a song that it goes to, maybe, or maybe it was a different one. But I don't have full speaking ability right now. At least I don't feel as confident in my lungs today. Okay. Arundel was a mariner that tarried in Arvanine. He built a boat of timber felled and Nimberthil to journey in. Her sails he wove of silverware, her lanterns made. Her prow he fashioned like a swan, and light upon her banners laid. In panoply of ancient kings, in chained rings he armored him. His shining shield was scored with runes, to ward all wounds and harm from him. His bow was made of dragon horn, his arrows shorn of ebony. Of silver was his habergeon, his scabbard of chalcedony. His swords of steel were valiant, of adamant his helmet tall, an eagle plume upon his crest, upon his breast an emerald. Beneath the moon and under star he wandered far from northern strands, bewildered on enchanted ways, beyond the days of mortal lands, from gnashing of the narrow ice where shadow lies on frozen hills. From nether heats and burning waste he turned in haste and roving still, on starless waters far astray. At last he came to night of naught, and paused, and never sight he saw of shining shore nor light he sought. The winds of wrath came driving him, and blindly in the foam he fled, from west to east and errandless, unheralded he homeward sped. There flying Elwing came to him, and flame was in the darkness lit, more bright than light of diamond, the fire upon her carcanet. The Silmaril she bound on him, and crowned him with the living light. And dauntless then, with burning brow, he turned his prow, and in the night, from other world beyond the sea, there strong and free a storm arose, a wind of power and terminal, by paths that seldom mortal goes. His boat it bore with biting breath, as might of death across the grey, and long forsaken seas distressed, from east to west he passed away. Through ever night he back was borne, on black and roaring waves that ran, o'er leagues unlit and foundered, shores that drowned before the days began, until he heard on strands of pearl, where ends the world, the music long, where ever foaming billows roll, the yellow gold and jewels wan. He saw the mountains silent rise, where twilight lies upon the knees of Valinor and Eldamar, behold afar beyond the seas. A wanderer escaped from night, to haven white he came at last, to elven home, the green and fair, where keen the air, where pale as glass. Beneath the hill of Ilmarin, a glimmer in a valley sheer, the lamplit towers of Tirion are mirrored on the Shadowmere. He tarried there from errantry, and melodies they taught to him, and sages old him marvels told, and harps of gold they brought to him. They clothed him then in elven white, and 7 lights before him sent. As through the Calasirian to hidden land forlorn he went, he came unto the timeless halls, where shining fall the countless years, and endless reigns the elder king in Ilmarin on mountain sheer. And words unheard were spoken then of folk and men and elven ken, beyond the world where vision showed, forbid to those that dwell therein. A ship then new they built for him, of mithril and of elven glass, with shining prow, no shaven oar nor sail she bore on silver mast, the Silmaril as lantern light, and banner bright with living flame, to gleam thereon by Elbereth herself was set, who thither came, and wings immortal made for him, and laid on him undying doom, to sail the shoreless skies, and come behind the sun and light of moon. From ever even's lofty hills, where softly silver fountains fall, his wings him bore a wandering light, beyond the mighty mountain wall. From world's end then he turned away, and yearned again to find afar his home through shadows journeying, and burning as an island star. On high above the mist he came, a distant flame before the sun, a wonder ere the walking dawn, where the grey Norland waters run. And over Middle Earth he passed, and heard at last the weeping sore of women and of elven maids, in elder days and years of yore. But on him mighty doom was laid, till moon should fade, an orbed star, to pass and tarry nevermore. On hither shores where mortals are, for ever still a herald on, an errand that should never rest, to bear his shining lamp afar, the flammifier of western ease. I made it to chapter 2. I read like Gimli runs. Archive, and that's fair. That's fair. I've heard it sung many different tunes, but even as a poem, I love it. It's also, yes, it is so long, but yes. So we've got, Arundel is who this is mostly about, obviously, but then we see that from Arundel comes Elnos and Elrond, and these were two. They decided to go different ways in life. Elrond obviously stayed and lived an elven life, and Elnos, right, went to live a more man life. He's half elven. Half elven. This is interesting because I think it's half blue because he chose the life of a man. And then from him came Aragorn, and from Elrond came Arwen. So they're cousins. Yeah. I hate that, but it's fine. Different times, I guess. Yeah, well, knowing the meaning of the story would help. Even with practice, still can't do it justice. No, fair. The poem is very good. Okay, and we continue. It is it is technically perfect, the poem itself, and comprises the best history of Arundel that we have recorded anywhere. Which that is what Wilde said. Okay, we continue. Then comes the Council of Elrond. So we're into chapter 2 now. That covers a lot of generations in the family tree. Yes. Yeah. I'm just a little hurt from skateboard, like Legolas. That's why? What do you mean? Some of the words unheard were spoken then. A folk of men of Elvencan were about the descendants of Arundel choosing to be men or elves. Elros chose to be a man. Elrond chose to be an elf, yes. And then from there we get Arwen and Aragorn. Cousins with dozens. Okay, that's right. Yes. Okay, now, yeah. Dozens of generations between. Okay, yes. So they're not direct cousins. Okay. Descendants of cousins. And that's how the world works. Yeah. On that family tree, it obviously abbreviates it. That's, yes. Okay, I see what we're all saying. Okay. Okay, and we continue. Then comes the Council of Elrond. Much is said there, and it is very dense. I will draw attention to only a handful of things, though it all merits deep understanding. The first of these things comes after Gloin's story of the messenger from Mordor at the Lonely Mountain. Elrond declares this to be the purpose for which they are called together, but insists he had not called them. He says instead that it has been so ordained that those present should decide things, implying that some higher power had decreed it. What this power is, we do not know, but Elrond seems to believe in it. Yeah. I love you. 60-ish generations from Elros to Aragon too. I fell in this. You fell a couple. Oh no, Archivy. I hope that you get better. I hope that you heal soon. I'm more worried about the 2,700 year age. Okay, Nick. Okay, Nick. Okay, Nick, calm down. You don't need to yell at me. She doesn't look a day over 2,600. That's, yes. Can you imagine dating someone 2,000 plus years older than you? Absolutely not. Elrond then tells a long story of the ring. It is more detailed than anything Gandalf has told us before, and we come to understand that Elrond has seen most of the history of the world unfold before his own eyes. Yes, we take away that Elrond must be a very old man. Boromir stands to speak of Gondor. He is shown to be proud and strong, but not full of hubris. He describes the fall of the eastern portion of that realm to a dark fear. Aragorn stands forth and produces the sword that was broken, revealing himself finally to be the heir of Isildur and rightful sovereign over all men. This is so, I'm reading this as if none of this, as if it's so, as if it's just blah blah blah, la-di-da, you know, just Boromir from Gondor, he's there. Although I will say, Boromir in the council, he shows a lot of red flags. He's a very, Boromir gets there because Gondor needs help, right? He has chosen to make this travel. It's like 100 days or something, and he makes it to Rivendell, and he's asking for help. And he's the most like skeptical and like strong spoken and strong spoken in the way of like going maybe against the grain of all the things. I can't comment line by line, okay? No. You're perfect. I felt like I was reading it in like a I felt like I was reading it like very like la-di-da-y, and I wanted to like take more pause with it. You're perfect. That's actually something many don't get when they go, oh yes, Arwen should follow her love. The scale of her sacrifice, her time with Aragorn is like a few weeks of her life. Yeah, I think I'm definitely someone who doesn't fully doesn't, like, you say that and I understand it, and then it's still just kind of like, yeah, but no. I like this line. Not all that was spoken and debated in the council need now be told. I note, however, that Tolkien takes many, many pages in spite of his note. Andrew, thank you for saying that, because yes, he does. And it gives me the biggest chuckle too, because I read that and then I was like, okay, you're saying this, and then this chapter is so freaking long. But then by the time I got to the end of the chapter, and even Gandalf is like, I felt it necessary to share everything that I shared. And I was like, you know what? I agree. It was necessary that we heard everything that we heard today. We're reading the abridged version of the council, and it's still so deep. Well, because there's so much packed into this chapter, truly. Like, we're getting the first introduction to so many pivotal characters. We get Boromir, we get Legolas, we get Gloin and Gimli, we get Elrond, we get more of Aragorn, of course, we get pivotal Gandalf moments, we get some Bilbo moments in there even. There's a lot of people packed into this, and the moments are so crucial. And so we learn really important things here. We learn like who Boromir is and where he comes from. And then we learn that Aragorn, who is one of many names, he is the son of Isildur, who and the sword that we had seen in Bree, the broken sword, is a very important broken artifact that will then, in a little bit, see get fixed and then renamed, and then Aragon will take that with him as we go. So I wrote this down when we get to this. So we're learning this. We learn that Aragon is the heir of Isildur, and Frodo immediately is like, wants to get rid of the ring, offers to give Aragon the ring. He goes, nope, never mind. You can have, this is yours. This is yours. This is yours. You can have it. And there's almost this desperation in the way he's trying to get rid of it, and he's not allowed to. Frodo is bidden to produce the ring. He is taken by a brief temptation to keep it hidden, but eventually does as he was told. Yes, the ring, we see the way that every moment with the ring, and there's not many moments in these 3 chapters where we see the ring, but the few moments where we think about the ring, or we see the ring, or the ring is brought out, are very tense. And this is one of them. And tense in the environment around them, but also tense in Frodo's heart. There's a lot of talk of Frodo's heart feeling fear, of Frodo's heart feeling heavy, of shadows casting over Frodo's heart or the environment around him. And I think that is very important to know. Off topic, have people seen The Martian? The codename of the meetings is Project Elrond, after the Council of Elrond. No, I haven't seen The Martian. I love that though. Frodo produces the ring, and Aragorn further remarks to prideful Boromir that his people are not so weak as he painted them. Bilbo tells, so then we get into the storytelling side of things. So Elrond has told the story of the ring, right? And then we hear Bilbo's story. Then Frodo tells, we hear Bilbo's story, the real story of Bilbo's experience with the ring is told, and how he came to get the ring. And then Frodo tells his story from the last couple of months and years, I guess, too, from prior leaving the Shire. Hold on. Bilbo breaks the 4th wall, telling Frodo that there are whole chapters of the tale before he got to Rivendell. Yes. Then Gandalf stands to speak. He tells of the search for Gollum and proof that he has the ring. He has that the ring is what he says it is. Yeah, so Gandalf, so we hear Bilbo, we hear Frodo, and then Gandalf comes in and goes, okay, I actually have a lot to say. One, I need to tell you all about the ring. Also, I was held captive by Saruman. It was tragic, it was traumatic, and I was basically one breath behind Frodo this entire time, but I just... once I couldn't, like, learning that Gandalf was like a hair behind Frodo the entire like journey thus far, and then once he learned that he was a Strider, he changed course, tried to follow some of the wraiths, tried to get them off course, and then went to Rivendell. I don't know what the feeling is, because it's not like a pit in my stomach, but there's like a weird jealousy or like a weird yearning for the meeting to have been sooner, right? Like, things would have been so much easier if we had just found Gandalf sooner. And we also hear Bilbo getting berated for being long-winded. And then we also learned that Aragorn had found Gollum, and we learned that Gollum was brought to the elves, not the elves in Rivendell, the elves elsewhere, and it was imprisoned. Oh, yes. His insistence that white is only a beginning. Saruman's insistence that white is only a beginning. Let's read that. Let me find that exact quote real quick, because there's so much within this. Okay. So Saruman was known as Saruman the White, and that was how Gandalf approached him when he got to Saruman. He says, "Yes, I have come. I have come for your aid, Saruman the White." And the title seemed to anger him. "Have you indeed, Gandalf the Grey?" he scoffed. "For aid?" It had seldom been heard of that Gandalf the Grey sought for aid, one so cunning and so wise, wandering about the lands and concerning himself in every business, whether it belongs to him or not. So Saruman did not waste any time being honest with Gandalf about why he'd asked for Saruman to come there. Luckily, Gandalf had told the wizard Radgast, who found him and told him to go to Saruman, had told him to send word of any of the Night Riders to him and Saruman. That obviously comes back to help us in the end. But then I looked and saw that his robes, which had seemed white, were not so, but were woven of all colors, and if he moved, they shimmered and changed hues, so that the eye was bewildered. I liked white better, I said. "White?" he sneered. "It serves as a beginning. White cloth may be dyed, the white page can be overwritten, and the white light can be broken." And Saruman is like, "Hey, so anyway, would you like to join forces? And we'll just take the power of the ring for ourselves. You know where the ring is. So we'll actually take the power for the ring. Think of how powerful we'll be if we have the ring." And Gandalf is like, what is it? I want to read exactly what he said. Oh. "Only one hand at a time can wield the wand, and you know that well, so do not trouble to say we." So like this entire time Saruman is like trying to manipulate Gandalf, and he's already got Gandalf trapped, even more so than Gandalf realizes at the time. I don't think Gandalf imagined at any moment in time until he was on the roof of the tower that that's where he would be trapped for months. But he was. Okay. "Things would have been easier if we found Gandalf sooner, yes, but as Frodo said, Strider saved us." Yes. And it's interesting because like Gandalf could have caught up to Strider probably, right? Like once he knew that they were with Strider, he probably could have figured out where Strider would have taken them. But he knew well enough, and it says a lot about Aragorn, that Gandalf was able to rest. The moment he learned that the hobbits were with Strider, Gandalf literally slept. Saruman the Ringmaker, we never hear of his ring again. Fair point. "Glorfindel, to show Glorfindel's might, the riders attacked Gandalf. Obviously they lost, but they thought it's worth a shot while running from Glorfindel." Oh. Thank you for that, Kelly. "Legolas is reporting on their treatment of Gollum. You were less tender to me," says Glorn. Yes, that moment, and then and Gandalf, I believe it's Gandalf or Elrond steps in and is like, "Oh, we can't get into that. We don't have time for this. We've laid respect to the wrongdoings in the past, so let's move on." But again, that's one of those moments where it shows how like those little tiny sentences of like calling back history set up a foundation of understanding of complications in the relationships in the room. So like dwarves and elves, we know, are not necessarily besties for the resties, you know? At least not in this point in time. Because even though maybe things have been righted, there's still pain for the wrongs that were done in the past. And that's fair. When Gandalf's tale finally ends, everyone ultimately accepts that the ring is as wise as they say it is, but they cannot decide what to do with it. So they consider sending it to Tom Bombadil, which I found to be so funny that Tom Bombadil was the first one. They're like, well, the ring didn't seem to affect him. And also, like, can't he just keep it? Like, if he seems so unaffected by everything around him, This is perfect. He can just keep it forever. So like we think that our options are to hide it forever or to destroy it, but we know that we can't destroy it with anything that we have. So our first choice is to try to find somewhere where we can hide it forever. Tom Bombadil, of all people, being the first person they bring up. They also consider sending it over the sea, following the path of Arendelle, but they decide that that cannot be done, that this belongs in Middle Earth and they can't just like send it overseas and put that on someone else. Boromir, this is wild specifically wants us to know, in quotes, or puts in parentheses, which I love, fingering his horn, demonstrating where his first thoughts always are, suggests using the ring themselves. So this is why I find Boromir's character interesting, is he is very determined. Like he is not swayed or easily to believe the stories that the wise and the like elders or the higher ranking people within this council are telling. He has a voice and he's using it, and he's using it very like sternly and directly, and as he should, right? Like we have the beauty of hindsight and like deeper understanding of the fuller story, so of course we're going to be like, stop it. But it's fair that he would do that. He has ulterior motives, which doesn't necessarily make him bad. It just is a difference of life lived, right? Contrary to the film's portrayal, they note that this could be done by those who already have great power, Elrond, Gandalf, Glorfindel, Aragorn, etc. But the wielder would inevitably set himself on a throne as Lord and prove to be the very evil they sought to undo. So yes, and I specifically wrote down two things. Because what it comes down to, why they decide it can't just be hidden, it has to be destroyed. The very desire of the ring corrupts the heart, and as long as it is in the world, it will be a danger even to the wise, because it will kill someone. It will like destroy lives of someone not wise, but like if someone wise gets it, it will be a danger even to the wisest of them all. And we saw that because even Saruman, who like he had been studying Sauron for so long, and that was something Elrond brought up later, was Saruman had been doing this deep studying, and in hindsight they realized that like whether it's true or not, Saruman had told them that the ring would never be found again, that it was lost forever. But they believe now that Saruman's whole plan had been to find the ring eventually, that he had already coveted it and desired it, and that he had been playing this long game to get the ring eventually and have this power. And he was someone they all revered as like a very close, wise council member. So this was kind of shattering to their perceptions, for sure. Part of Boromir here is also asking the questions the reader wants to ask. We would ask why we can't use the ring, so Boromir asks for us. Yes, that's so beautifully said. Boromir is the closest thing to like human vulnerable man we see in this story. Everyone else has a little bit of something else to move them forward, to tide them over, to make the decisions easier for them, because I wrote somewhere like even like something like that, something so evil, when or maybe it's the power of it all, right? I think is what I was thinking of. When you're faced with something so powerful and you face it and you see this world of opportunity, this world that appears like, if you get this power, think of how everything else will be so easy. Think of all these problems that will be solved, right? And it's really, really hard to stand up against that power and say, no, actually, because to choose that power, I have to go against my morals. I have to go against what I truly believe in, who I truly am. Like, if I want to, I can choose that path, but if by choosing that path, I am not staying true to the values I hold. But it's a really hard thing to do when you're given this opportunity of power that will seemingly solve everything for you and set you up on a pedestal. And then it's like, who cares if you have all this power? Then who cares if you're good or bad? But at the end of the day, like, you should care. You're the only one who can truly care about how you interact with the world. Others can have opinions and whatnot, and those matter. Those are valid and they matter. But you have to live with you 24/7. So you need to be happy with how you lead your life. And some people are willing to sacrifice some of that morals easier than others. Okay. And then Wild's last note on the council is this. In the end, Frodo volunteers to carry the ring. Elrond names him the Mount Rushmore of elf friends. Not only does he do this, but he declares that he is not the least of the celebrated group. Frodo is one of the greatest non-elves to ever live, and he has done thus far is volunteer for the quest. How great will he be if he succeeds? This is a group of people that really honor and value intention. And Frodo had this moment where he was like, I would really like to just relax and rest with Bilbo. And then he's like, but I can't. I'll take the ring, he says. And they go, yes, actually you will. Hi, Carlos. Bilbo does offer to take the ring first. And Boromir was the only one who didn't take it, earn it, like wanted to laugh. And everyone else was like, okay, yeah, no. And Gandalf said it so well, because Gandalf said, if this was your fault, it would be right that you took the ring. Because that's how Bilbo started. He goes, okay, I get it. You're saying it's my fault that the ring is in this position of power, and that this position of power is catastrophic to the world around us right now. I'll take the ring. I'll do this. I'd really wish to rest and write my book, but I guess my book won't have a happy ending. And Gandalf goes, you know what? And Bilbo, you're right. If this had been your fault, that would be the right decision. However, we know well enough now about the ring to know that this is not one person's decision or one person's doing or fault. And also, besides that, you're definitely not strong enough to go. You can't go take the ring, Bilbo. You have to stay. So you will stay, and leaves him with like this little word of encouragement. He's like, you ought to just write your book and live a happy little life here in Rivendell. And Bilbo's like, great, wonderful. But of course that leads Frodo to make his decision to step up. And I think the decision for Frodo to carry the ring would have, even if Frodo hadn't stepped up and offered it, I think it would have been decided for him, my opinion on how the council kind of works. Because there definitely seems to be like choice, and they want people to do things based on choice, but there also seems to be this hierarchy of power and respect. And like, if Elrond tells you to do something, you're gonna do something. He's connected with the ring. He's the ring bearer. Exactly. That's why, in my opinion, it was always going to be Frodo. But it's great that he offered to do it before he was forced to do it, you know? These Elfren, Hadorn, Hurin, and Turin are all in the various family tree of Beren and Arendelle. Oh. Yes. Okay. So then we take the ring south. They're spied on. So it takes a few months, like 2 months or something. We leave. It's about to be winter time. We take very little war items with us. We plan to just sneak, right? So we're not planning to fight. We're just planning to sneak our way out. We leave with 9. It's Frodo, Sam, Merry, Pippin, Gandalf, Aragorn, Boromir, Gimli, and Legolas. Those are the 9 that were chosen, and they all have their reasons. And I think what's so we have this moment where Elrond comes to send them off. And I think that this is really important because this also goes back to like choice and whatnot. At that moment, Elrond came out with Gandalf and he called the company to him. "This is my last word," he said in a low voice. "The ring bearer is setting out on the quest of Mount Doom. On him alone is any charge laid, neither to cast away the ring, nor to deliver it to any servant of the enemy, nor indeed to let any handle it, save members of the company and the council, and only them in the gravest need. The others go with him as free companions, to help him on his way. You may tarry, or come back, or turn aside into other paths as chance allows. The further you go, the less easy it will be to withdraw. Yet no oath or bond is laid on you to go further than you will. For you do not yet know the strength of your hearts, and you cannot foresee what each may meet upon the road." And then Gimli chimes in and says, "Faithless is he that says farewell when the road darkens." "Maybe," said Elrond, "but let him not vow to walk in the dark who has not seen the nightfall." "Yet sworn word may strengthen quake in heart," said Gimli. "Or break it," said Elrond. "Look not too far ahead, but go now with good hearts. Farewell, and may the blessings of elves and men and all free folk go with you. May the stars shine upon your faces." This sets up what I imagine to be a future where like people have to leave either by choice or by happenstance or whatever. Like we know that Aragorn and Boromir are going because they're both going to Gondor. Boromir needs to go back to Gondor, and Aragorn needs to get his sword to Gondor, to help aid Gondor. And there were other people that had to do other things, so it's it sets us up in the beginning to be like, it's not always going to be you 9, but there's choice. You have free will. You're not lesser for leaving at whatever time you need to leave, which is interesting. So we make it to Holen. Holen is like Holland is usually like a really safe place. What I found really interesting there is that Legolas, who is an elf, can hear the earth talking, and the only parts of the earth that still remember the elves are the rocks, which feel like the densest, probably like most porous, dense, hold on to atmospheric thing in that environment that would hold on to memory for longer than other things that would let in more. Maybe I guess rocks are not porous, but so it makes sense that the rocks are the only things that remember the elves and remember them dearly, but also the rocks are like, but the elves left us. And we also hear from Aragorn that it's too quiet. It's so quiet. It's too quiet. And it's eerie. And there's no birds. There's no animals. And then as we're keeping watch, a bunch of birds, the j.r.r, fly over. And they're spies, we assume. So we have to leave earlier than we planned to. We start climbing up the mountain. As we're climbing up the mountain, it starts snowing. And we get stuck there for a little bit. And there's a moment where before we had left, Boromir, and I'll say this, like there are moments within the beginning of this trek where Boromir comes through like with greatness in the darkest and toughest of times. He reminds us to get flames and to get woods, and then when we're all stuck and like Frodo is passing out under a mound of snow, he pulls Frodo out, and then he's like, Gandalf, it's fire or it's death. We need to light a fire. We need to get warm right now. And Gandalf's like, okay, yes. They try to light the fire. They can't do it. Gandalf grabs the fire, lights it, hands it back to them. They get warm. They get up. The time passes. And they're like, okay, we can't continue to go up. We need to go down. Come to find out that it's like the mountain itself, or the Caradra, something that oversees this land, something more powerful, doesn't want them there. So they're forced to find some other way. So they want to go back down. And this was Legolas is so hot, dude. Legolas watched them for a while with a smile upon his lips, and then turned to the others. The strongest must seek a way, say you, but I say, let a plowman plow, but choose an otter for swimming, and for running light over grass and leaf, or over snow, an elf. And then he runs off, and he finds a way for them. And I just wrote hot exclamation point, because it was, and it is, Caradhras. Okay, thank you. I don't think much of your diary. Snowstorms on January the 12th. There was no need to come back to report that. I know. Even as like Frodo's like passing out, his brain is so sassy to him. Yeah, so they turn around. But in this moment, we see Boromir come through when we need him, right? So we see this greatness in him. We see Legolas. We actually like, it's funny because I kind of gaslight myself into thinking I know who Legolas is in this moment, but like in reading the book, we wouldn't. That Legolas is like, wait a second, I'm an elf, and he like runs away, and he comes through in that moment. And you get this idea because he's the only one who like still has energy and doesn't seem to have faltered after like taking the brutality of this storm. You get this idea that like he is like nimble, quiet, and powerful. He's a sneaky, little, snarky, powerful elf. We get to see Aragorn and Gandalf, who seem to be like the closest companions of everyone. They have this trust in this relationship, and even when they disagree, because we see them like disagreeing about the path to take, but they do it in a way that is really respectful of each other. And we do get to see these like huge pivotal character moments, which to call back to the Council of Elrond, like we start seeing this build up from the beginning. The moment we meet each of these characters, we get little tidbits on who they are, deeper than just like Legolas has long blonde hair and is an elf. You know, there's these very carefully chosen words that Tolkien chose to represent the character's soul. And that's one of Tolkien's greatest aspects in his writing, is giving us the soul of a character without sometimes ever giving us a description of the character. Or without being super heavy-handed with the description of the characters. Physical descriptions, I should say. Okay, let me get into some quotes from Nick, and then we'll circle back and go from there. What are we at? Yeah, like an hour and 8 minutes. Okay, yes. I had a feeling today we might rattle closer to 2 hours than an hour 40. But we'll see. Who knows? Okay, so Nick's quotes and a question. Nick, thank you for dropping these quotes in the community section. Let me start with the Hobbit quotes. I love that you broke this out into the serious quotes and the Hobbit quotes. Let's start with a little lighthearted Hobbit quotes, because I love my Hobbits. Also, did you guys see the game that's coming out next year, the Cozy Shire game? I will be playing that. I'm so excited. Let me be a little hobbit in a little probably farming life simulator. Oh my god. Can I run the inn? I would love to just be a little hobbit that runs the inn. That would be nice. Okay. We'll see what the game is, but I'm excited for it regardless. Okay, the Hobbit quotes from chapter 1. You have shown your usual cunning in getting up just in time for a meal. Pippin to Frodo when the hobbits are reunited. Bilbo followed to the Council of Bilbo followed to the Council of Elrond. It's your fault, partly, Frodo, my lad, insisting on waiting for my birthday. A funny way of honoring it, I can't help thinking. Not the day I should have chosen for letting the Sackville Bagginses into Bag End. First of all, happy birthday to both Bilbo and Frodo. But we missed it by just a couple of days, but it was last week. And I too love Bilbo's disdain for the Sackville Bagginses. I also love that Bilbo's just like, let me just throw this in here real quick. Tolkien never really describes a character's looks. It's all rather vague. Some colors, curly hair, and the rest is reader's imagination. And that's great. Truly. He does a lot of soul exploration with the characters, and I think that goes a long way. Although I'll say, like, I'm biased because I have the images of the characters from the movie in my head for the most part. So that's who I see when I read the book versus like seeing something else. Snow's all right on a fine morning, but I like to be in bed while it's falling. Sam when it begins to snow and climbing up Carothras. Me too. I am not a winter girly. If it's going to be cold or if it's going to be snowing, I would like to be sitting inside with a glass of hot cocoa, and I do not want to be bothered by the coldness. I want to be safe inside and warm. So I resonate with Sam deeply there. Shelter, muttered Sam. If this is shelter, then one wall and no roof makes a house. That is specifically when the group is under a ledge and they can't go forward, they can't go back yet. It's snowing and they have to like stay under this ledge and someone calls it shelter. And Sam is like, no, absolutely not. You're out of your mind. This is not shelter. Okay. Let's go back to the serious quotes, and then I want to talk on some of the characters a little bit more, specifically starting with Sam. Before we end out, I'm interested in knowing any characters you guys would like to talk about. Okay, from chapter 1. But so far, my only thought has been to get here, and I hope I shan't have to go any further, Frodo to Gandalf after waking up in Rivendell. Oh, Frodo, my boy, my guy. Frodo wished so deeply for rest and relaxation and just to be with Bilbo, and I wish he could have had that. I would rather see Bilbo than all the towers and palaces in the world. Again, Frodo's love for Bilbo shines through again and again. In chapter 2, Gandalf retells his excitement when hearing that Aragorn is guiding the hobbits. Ass, fool, thrice worthy and beloved Barlowman, it's the best news I've had since midsummer. It's worth a gold piece at the least. May your bier be laid under an enchantment of surpassing excellence for 7 years. Now I can take a night's rest, the first since I have forgotten when. We talked about this a little bit earlier. I think it's very important to note that, like, that gives Aragorn so much credit, and it really builds him up as a character of deep, deep worthiness and trustfulness, that Gandalf would sleep rather than continuing his journey or feel like he could have like an actual rest. And also that Gandalf went from being extremely mad that the letter didn't make it to Frodo when it should have, to like blessing his bier. You don't like summer or winter? Fall is your thing? I get that. Fall is a nice season. I read it 35 years ago for the first time, and I thought the film cast was exactly like in my head. I love hearing that. I do. There's nothing more disappointing than the casting being different than what you'd imagined. This is also from chapter 2. The westward road seemed easiest, therefore it must be shunned. It will be watched too often the elves have fled that way. Now at this last we must take a hard road, a road unforeseen. There lies our hope, if hope it be, to walk into peril, to Mordor. We must send the ring to the fire. We have to. That quote is, that's our purpose. All of that, pretty much The first 2 chapters that we read today were just recountings, rehashing, and setting a purpose, and our purpose is we have to bring the ring to Mordor. Furious to putting an enchantment on the beard to make it excellent in about 10 seconds is an incredible turnaround. Again, it speaks so highly of Aragorn. Like, I have so much trust in Aragorn as a character, you know? Because of the actions that others take around him. So it's not even like the way that Aragorn's soul is described. It's the other way people act around him. This is the hour of the Shire folk, when they arise from their quiet fields to shake the towers and councils of the great. Who of all the wise could have foreseen it? Or if they are wise, why should they expect to know it? Until the hour has struck. Elrond said that to Frodo after the Hobbit offers to bear the ring. Elrond is such a great, steady, stable, wise character. And that really does put this like hope and belief, and also like it's the hour of the Shire folk. Faithless is he that says farewell when the road darkens. Oh yeah, we read that earlier, Gimli at the start of the fellowship journey. But I think it's also fair that then Elrond goes, huh? Is that faithless though? Much bigger in the book than Aragorn is much bigger in the book than in the movie, especially to the end when he accepts his role. I'm excited to see his character arc and how he continues to be portrayed in this book. But that brings us to, we did meet so many people. And without getting into the new people, let's run it back on some of the people that we met and talk about their impacts on the book thus far. Because one person I very specifically want to talk about, and thank you, Nick, for bringing this up as well, is Sam. Because Sam becomes, I've said this in past meetings and discussions, Sam was kind of like too much and too overbearing at times for me. And in this portion of the book, Sam feels like he's becoming more of a friend. Like when Frodo wakes up, one of the first things he asks is, where's Sam? He doesn't ask about Merry or Pip first. He asks about Sam. And Sam is like much more relaxed. Like he's much more trustworthy. And then he's like still his silly, goofy self, but he's not letting his anxiety lead the way necessarily at the moment. And we get to see this like softer side of him, which I really, really enjoyed. Yeah. Oh, Nick also said, I also love Sam's relationship with Bill the pony. Me too. Me as well. There's all right, who else? We've talked a little bit about Aragorn. We talked a little bit about Legolas of Boromir. Is there anyone else? We didn't really get a lot of Gimli thus far. Gimli is new to us, but Gimli is still kind of elusive, I would say. But let me just pass through some of my notes in the book. See if there's anything. There was a lot of like, they put a lot of respect on rangers and rangers' impact in the world, and that like, this is a direct quote. That is just what rangers are, the last remnant in the north of the great people of the men in the west. They have helped me before, and I shall need their help in the days to come. For we have reached Rivendell, but the ring is not yet at rest. There's another moment where they like really nail in that rangers are like these really necessary counterparts, and knowledgeable counterparts. And Bill could take a bit more, couldn't you, lad? Said Sam. The pony looked at him mournfully. Yep. Sam did say, you could have stayed, Bill. And they said, if Bill could have spoken, Bill would have said, I'm coming with ya, or whatever. Back to the I Sit Beside the Fire and Think poem, slightly ruined for me by the Board of the Rings parody version. A magical line: in every wood and every spring there is a different green. I was just looking at that poem and I was thinking we could read it if you guys would like. Where is that? Is that in the... Here it is. Trying to re-put this in context. Oh, this is a poem from Bilbo. So we also should remember Bilbo gives Frodo a really important sword and a really important mirth shirt, I think is what it's made of. That's also important. We have to circle back to it. Let's circle back to it. Yes. So it's kind of like Frodo and Bilbo are talking. Bilbo gives Frodo the shirt and the sword. And okay. Frodo goes, I cannot thank you, as I should, Bilbo, for this, and for all your past kindness, said Frodo. Don't try, said the old hobbit, turning round and slapping him on the back. Ow, he cried, you are too hard now to slap, but there you are. Hobbits must stick together, and especially Bagginses. All I ask in return is, take as much care of yourself as you can, and bring back all the news you can, and any old songs and tales you can come by. I'll do my best to finish my book before you return. I should like to write the second book, if I am spared. He broke off and turned to the window again, singing softly. I sit beside the fire and think of all that I have seen, of meadow flowers and butterflies and summers that have been, of yellow leaves and gossamer and autumns that there were, with morning mist and silver sun and wind upon my hair. I sit beside the fire and think of how the world will be when winter comes without a spring that I shall ever see. That, I almost cried when I read that the first time. For still there are so many things that I have never seen. In every wood and every spring there is a different green. I sit beside the fire and think of people long ago, and people who will see a world that I shall never know. Mithril, thank you, Michael. But all the while I sit and think of times there were before. I listen for returning feet and voices at the door. I love this. This, I think, is my favorite. This part really gets me every time. I sit beside the fire and think of how the world will be when winter comes without a spring that I shall ever see. Bilbo is such a intricate character. He's so goofy, but he's also so, like, he sings these poems and they have this loveliness to them, but they're so pointed. Like, oh my God, there's so much to them. I'm in awe. I really am. Okay. Let me just, yes, respect on the Rangers. I'm just double checking. Yes. Yeah. You could easily take a graduate level class that just goes over these poems. They're that good, and yet you're so right. Yeah. I wrote crying, so cute, when Frodo said, I would rather see him than all the towers and palaces in the world. Oh yeah, there's so okay. I want to go over one of these quotes just about the shot. Oh wait. Yeah, we could. The dwarf. It's interesting to know. Maybe I don't know if it'll come back up, but the dwarves had 3 people go missing essentially, and then we find out that one of them was on the hunt for the ring, because Sauron had gone to them and made them an offer to turn to the dark side essentially. But you know, I don't know. There's one more note in here that Bilbo says someone else always has to carry on the story, which I think is kind of beautiful. Like, don't adventures ever have an end? I suppose not. Someone else always has to carry on the story. And it's so true, like someone does. And it kind of like foreshadows that the story never really ends. They were partially on the hunt for one of the dwarf rings. They were not looking for the one. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I did get a little confused near the end. I did think they were talking about the one. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I feel like we covered it. Like, we didn't talk about Isildur's scroll that's in Gondor, that Gandalf found. That cleared up some of the history of where the ring had been. A horseman from Mordor visits Dane to ask for friendship and the info about the return of a little ring. Yeah, right. It's like I get it. Sauron obviously was like, go tell, no big deal, I just want this ring. They know the hobbits, if they know where it is, like, think of all the good I can do for you. We'll just join together. We'll be so powerful. But it's like, you say you want this like little trivial ring, but you're willing to give us he was willing to give them the 3 missing rings back, is what they were told. And they were like, yeah, there's no way this ring is just a silly little ring. It's just like my grandmother's engagement ring. It's just a silly little ring. No, it's not. No, it's not. Yeah. I mean, we've ended on quite, like, the chapter ends at quite the precipice, because we can assume that we're gonna have to go the dark secret way that we overheard Gandalf and Aragorn talking about. Oh, you did. That's right. That's right, Andrew. Hold on. Okay. Yes. Thank you, because that's why Andrew was like, it's probably worthwhile having a review of Elrond's family tree, and that was when I found the family tree image. We can bring that back up just for reference while we go back over this. Oh, this. So within the poem, Elwing and Arendelle, so we talked about that. Elwing and Arendelle had the 2 sons that chose different paths. Elros chose to be of mankind, mortal. Elrond chose to be elf kind. We got to know Elrond in these last few chapters. So that's why, yes. So Aragorn and Arwen are descendants. Yeah, I will say I do think we did. I didn't necessarily read it directly, but We did kind of touch on this when we went over the poem, yeah? Unless, did you put 2 in here? Oh, you did. That's my bad. Yes. Okay. Behind the scenes notes on the Arundel Was a Mariner song. Bilbo's Arundel Was a Mariner song was based on Tolkien's poem Errantry, first published in 1933. Tolkien's original poem is about the adventurers of a tiny fairy. There are grasshoppers and dragonflies, and the fairy marries a butterfly. The earliest draft of the poem starts. The picture was worth my 1,000 words. I so appreciate you guys. I can't say this enough. Like, you really do make this what it is. Okay. The Tolkien's original poem is about a tiny fairy, grasshoppers and dragonflies, and the fairy marries a butterfly. Beautiful. The earliest draft of the poem starts, there was a merry passenger, a messenger, an errander. He took a tiny porringer and oranges for provender. I loved that. Seth, I'm so glad you made it. Thank you for Andrew. I'm so sorry I missed this when we were going over this poem. I was focused on the family tree part. Okay. According to Tolkien, the origin of the 1933 Errantry poem was a line he remembered. I won't even try to say that. The meaning behind the line is that there is traditionally no word in English that rhymes with the word orange. The poem that Tolkien referenced rhymes porringer with orange-her and is a reference to William of Orange. Man. That's true. Nothing does rhyme with orange. Tolkien integrated the Arundel song into the Middle-earth by starting with Errantry and changing lines. The original Errantry poem was modified so much that only one line remains of the original in Bilbo's song, his scabbard of Chalcedony. Oh. This was, yes, because I was remembering when I was reading it, I was like, if I had my full nose and lung capacity, I would put on a little pirate song, or the I am the very model of a modern major general, and I would try to sing it to those hymns for you all, but I don't have that capacity. Not today, at least. Oranger, I hardly know her. All right, let's take a peek, a preview of next week's chapters. We're reading 4, 5, and 6. We're meeting next Monday, a week from today, same time, 5 p.m. A journey in the dark, the bridge of Khazad-dûm. Ooh, we've heard a lot about Khazad-dûm, and then Lothlorien. Ooh, this is a kind of another let's see how many pages this is. 437 minus 71 pages. Okay. Yeah, this is a little bit of a banger. And then our last section is not that long. We do 7, I think it's just 7, 8. Is there 9 chapters? Or just 8? Yeah, no, 7, 8, and 9. And that's, let's see, 506. Okay, so the next 2 sections are about 70 pages each, give or take 1 or 2 pages, which for me, my first read through usually takes about 20 pages, is about an hour. Next 3 chapters get dark and spooky. Oh, I'm kind of excited, prepared to talk about Gimli next week. Thank God, because I just said, I was like, we didn't really get, of all the ways we got to really deeply know characters, we didn't really get to meet Gimli. And it was kind of interesting because I do feel like they introduced Gloin to us at the capacity they introduced the other 9 in the Fellowship to us, and then it's Gimli that goes with us. It's like, oh, Gloin's son is coming, which it makes sense. But we just didn't get to really meet Gimli this week. But next week, I can't wait. So, A Journey in the Dark, The Bridge of Khazad-dûm, and Lothlorien. Dark spooky chapters next Monday. Is there any last parting words, my friends, before we go? We have got 2 more weeks of Fellowship of the Ring, and then we move on to Two Towers. I'm so looking forward to it. Last call, last call. I know that was just a joke, but the full line of the Orange poem was, and gave the Prince of Orange her... Yeah, but it'll be different than you imagine. Oh no. Oh God. See ya. All right, guys, we're heading out of here. I will see you next week, 5 p.m. You can go ahead and let me drop the link for next week's scheduled stream so you can go over there and hit that notify button right now. Share. Okay. And then if you're not in the Discord yet and you would like to join, please. Like generating a new link fucks things up every time, but okay, there's a link for that too. So see you next week, guys. Thank you for everything. Thank you, Wild. Thank you, Arkavi. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Michael and Kelly. And everyone else. Thank you for watching. Whether you're watching live right now or you're joining us later, it was a pleasure having you. Don't forget to like and subscribe on the video, and I'll see you next.